Hi, my name is Londe Yusuf.
And my name is Reggie Williams.
And we're the co-founders of Black Film Space. Black Film Space is a grassroots organization dedicated to enhancing the skill sets of Black filmmakers and building a community of creatives. We host events such as screenwriting workshops, panels, mixers, and other events that are designed to support Black content creators.
In the next episode of the Black Film Space podcast, we interview Michelle Clementine. Michelle is an assistant camera who has worked on If Beale Street Could Talk and See You Yesterday. We talk with Michelle about her journey to becoming an AC, how joining the union has improved her career, cameras, and much more. And now, on to our interview. All right, Michelle, thank you for joining us on the Black Film Space podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
How did you get into being an assistant camera?
I think it all kind of started when I was in high school. I was into photography. We had a dark room at my school at Urban Academy. And it was the thing that kind of turned me on to cameras. My teachers used to say I was really good at it and that I should really explore it. And it was something I kind of didn't give much thought to, I was like, these adults don't know what they're talking about, as kids do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of just left that alone after I graduated for some time. But then as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I found myself at an internship at a Tribeca Film Festival. And it was around the time that I was trying to figure out what kind of major I should pick in college. And so I had a film production, major at Brooklyn College. And so I just decided to pick that. And I was terrified from that day forward. So it was kind of scary because I had no idea what it meant. I didn't know anything about the film industry. And after graduating, I just kind of linked up with my classmates who all kind of gave me PA jobs. And from the PA jobs, I kind of harassed the camera people and would just ask them and beg them to hire me as their PA. And one of them, this really awesome guy named Bob Ragazine, told me he couldn't teach me anything on the job. He was just like, I can't do this. There's so much to learn.
Mm-hmm.
You need to work at a rental house. And so that was the first time I ever heard anything about a rental house. And so the biggest ones in New York are Panavision and Arri.
Mm-hmm.
And so I applied to Arri, and a year after I applied, I got in.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah. And so for anybody who doesn't know, working at a rental house, it's kind of like grad school that you're getting paid to attend. You're getting to know all the top gear in the industry. You're meeting all the top DPs and camera assistants in the world who are renting out this equipment. And so it was a great opportunity to not only learn the gear, but to also network with the people who would eventually hire me out of that company. Because that position, being a prep tech, is kind of a revolving door. It's specifically for camera assistants to learn the gear, to be hired out, to join the union pretty much as soon as they leave there.
And what were you doing there as a prep tech exactly?
At first, it's kind of like the really boring job tasks, like cleaning cases and organizing the equipment and stuff. But through that, it's like you're able to see how to care for equipment. And then from there, once you kind of know your way around all the gear, because they had a huge warehouse in Jersey that they had just moved to. And it was a very big space with a lot of equipment. And just getting to know the gear from there. And then once you're entrusted with it, with knowing your way around the gear, how to, if you get one piece, one piece usually means that you got to get all these other pieces to make it all work together cohesively. And then being able to recognize that and do that, then it's just like, okay, now we trust you to work with these ACs who are loyal customers or who, we work with for years. And you kind of just want to, it's having good customer service skills and being able to talk with the ACs who are eventually prepping a camera package for a feature film, for a commercial, for a music video or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think made you a strong AC over time? Like what technical skills?
A lot of it is really just being able to, initially at least, like taking orders, and because there's a hierarchy, and it really is kind of like the military in the sense where it's just like when somebody says something, you just do it, and you kind of don't want them to repeat themselves. And so just having an overall like good listening skills and work ethic and like a go-to like a sort of take charge attitude is always going to help. But really, I think just the thing that benefited me the most was being myself and kind of having a positive attitude. Because a lot of times, you're meeting guys who are in this industry for like 20, 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
and they've kind of like, they've been around the block, they know what they're doing, and they kind of just have like a no BS approach to a lot of things. So it's just like, if you could keep them in a good mood, get their coffee, make sure their batteries and everything are charged or replaced when they're low, just making sure that they look good doing their job. It served me well. And, being able to make a conversation. A lot of times, like, people just want to be around positive people, even if your work ethic isn't A1, so I think a lot of times, like, especially when I first joined, I wouldn't know everything that being on set entailed. There's a lot of surprises that you might not expect that'll happen. Like, it'll suddenly start raining, and now you got to make sure that everything is covered and stuff. So it's just like knowing what the weather forecast would be for the day,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, okay, if it is going to rain or if it is going to snow, like having like wet gear ready to go, having our tents covering things so that if it does pour on us suddenly, we have that as our first protection. And then we do the specific protections of like the lenses and the cameras and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just having a sort of take charge attitude about things, being yourself and having a sort of lighthearted, positive attitude, and really just kind of being, seeing where the puzzle pieces are missing and trying to find those pieces and put it in the puzzle.
Mm.
That's really a lot of it. There's things that the ACs or DP or the operator might not be paying attention to, so if you're putting in an ND filter, that, you're losing a part of a stop, a third of a stop for each one. So knowing that, okay, I should open the lens at this point. So it's just like, once you get into the camera and all those things, first it starts from the outside stuff of like the batteries, like when you're a loader or a second. But then as you make your way as a first AC, and then knowing like, okay, the DP is adding an ND filter probably because they want to open up on the iris on the lens. And so that does a different thing on the focus aspect of things. They might want to have the lens wide open, so that's why they're stopping down in front of it instead of at the iris. So it's those types of things that it's like I have to be aware of. And if the DP hasn't changed them, like making sure like, hey, I added this filter, you want me to open up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant to tell you,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like looking out for everybody and making sure that things are working efficiently and effectively.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like you have to almost be able to read their mind a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of aspects of the job is kind of being intuitive in that way. A lot of time, I took a course for cinematography. It wasn't really a course, but it was like a pilot program that they're trying to introduce at American Film Institute. And one of the books that they gave us to read was like, a psychology book. Mm-hmm. And knowing how to deal with, knowing how to read people by their body language or the nonverbal cues, and knowing how to deal in different circumstances with different personalities,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like for every action, there has to be a trigger for that. So why did you ask me to do this? It's because, so it's like having follow through, like if I'm being instructed to do this, or if I see the gaffer doing that, does that mean that I have to now use this piece of equipment to balance out things across the board? And so if I know that they're putting up a light and it's kind of shining into my lens, like I had to know, okay, maybe I should put a mask in front of the lens so that I don't get, because I'm not getting the good glare. I'm getting like just all this stuff. It's spilling into my lens and you don't really see the image clearly. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to assume that you want me to do this, and 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. But then if the DP, if I'm doing something, the DP sees like, no, that's not what I want. There's communication that happens, and we're just trying to have like clarity from the top to bottom.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you like about being an AC?
I like the technical aspects of it. I like just knowing the camera and moving my way around the camera. And there's some times where you have some people who they skip the AC route. They kind of go into camera like knowing that they want to be DPs. So they may like start off as a gaffer, or they start off as camera op, or even a DP straight out of school, and all that's fine. Everyone has their path. But I think that what I appreciate about my experience is that if I do have opportunities to DP, I know that what an AC needs to get their job done, and mm-hmm. I think that it just informs everything that I do going forward, and it's kind of helped me in my life, like just in general, that it's just like, you have to be able to be intuitive. When you see a problem, you kind of, you address it, you get to it, you solve the problem. And it's just like, you're just trying to find ways. It's like it's like MacGyver ways of fixing things, because you just, things are supposed to work a certain way, and they work a certain way, maybe at the checkout or when you're at the rental house. But then when you're on location, you don't expect that, you're going to be on a beach and the sand is affecting your equipment in a different way. So how do I prevent sand from getting into the gears of this camera? Mm-hmm. How do I protect it from water? What if there's too much wind and like I have to strengthen and tie down certain things, and maybe I should get a grip to give me some sandbags for this. And it's just knowing how to talk to people. I think it helped develop my social skills. I was a very shy person, when I started out in college, and now I what I really like about this industry is that you meet all new people all the time. Yeah. It's just like from every generation. And, people have different backgrounds that they come into this thing with, and it's really a lot of fun. It honestly, like, it's not like open heart surgery. We're not hurting anybody. We're pushing culture forward, and to be around other like-minded people who are kind of, for the most part, pretty creative and open. It's just like I learn a lot of different things every day that I'm on set. And I've been doing this now like for about 14 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a really nice thing. And I still feel like I'm going, like, the first day on a job still feels like the first day at school. Like I get the butterflies in the pit of my stomach, and, I feel a little bit anxious. I might not be able to sleep the night before. But then once you get through day one, it's just like, you're applying all your experience and knowledge. And it's just like, oh, this is how it'll work. And no job is ever the same. And so you're always on your toes, and it keeps it exciting and interesting.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that every time you go on set, you learn something new. What's the last thing that you learned?
I was on set yesterday, and I learned that the easy rig isn't as awful as I thought it could be. I was camera operating for my friend's test shoot for a feature film, and there was some, I had to like handhold the camera, and they wanted the handheld work, and we were with the Venice, and this thing was easily like about 35 pounds or something with all the gack on it. And I used the easy rig. And it's something I try to avoid. I try to just hold the camera on my own. But this thing didn't have like the right attachments for a proper like shoulder mount. And so I used the Easy Rig, and it's such a big, goofy thing, but it actually like really held the weight of the camera. So it didn't kill me, like it didn't kill my back or my shoulders or anything. Um, and so that was a nice thing to know, because a lot of times I'm just trying to avoid looking goofy. And sometimes you can't help that, with some of the camera gear that we have. And it really is heavy. And a lot of things, like for me, it's really safety is always like the priority for me and my crew. Like I always want to make sure, I always tell people, don't run on set. I don't care how fast or how much somebody's yelling, like just don't run on set. Don't feel like you have to pick up the heaviest thing and run over here. And, I don't want anybody tripping and breaking their back or anything like that. So it's just like realizing that the Easy Rig is actually a pretty good, solid piece of equipment.
Can you also talk about maybe communities of other ACs that you're a part of? And is there, do people exchange a lot of tips and information amongst each other? How do you learn about the latest ways to do your job?
Well, we do. I mean, I'm in the union, so Local 600 is really good with communicating the newest everything. Anything that comes out of NAB, it's reported on, like at least in the magazines or in different things. And then I kind of am part of like a bunch of different Facebook groups where they also like discuss new pieces of gear. So a lot of times I just really observe what's working, and sometimes like part of the camera department, I call us the camera geeks, because a lot of time we're geeking out over the newest piece of equipment that somebody could show off to each other and say, oh man, that's cool. I just spent like, $8,000 on this little pin that does this. And like, oh, okay, cool. Like, is that worth me getting? And it's just like a lot of times, like, I don't think it is, because at the end of the day, as an AC, I like to consider my camera operator, and a lot of times we have, now that we have more women as camera operators, we have people of different heights and sizes and stuff. So it's just like, I just try to keep the weight of my camera as light as possible, because on a lot of projects, there are a lot of handheld situations. And so it's just like, I don't like to put too much stuff on my camera that makes it then heavier for the camera op to do their job. So for me, what's helped me is just being able to, I learned a lot of the old school approaches to doing things, like I would take a hacky sack and throw it like in a room that I know is 30 feet long, So I would throw that, I would stand against one wall, throw the hacky sack, and estimate how far that distance is, and then measure it out. And so that I could be able to, by eye, tell the distance between anything from 1 to 30 feet, and anything after that, I could use a laser. It's just those types of things. I've observed people, I've seen what works, I've seen what doesn't work. And I kind of like do my own thing, and what will work for me. And for me, I just feel like a lot of the old school, like tried and true things, with or without technology, with or without the advances that technology has afforded a lot of people, I kind of don't need certain pieces of equipment. Like a lot of people like the Light Ranger, a lot of people like, what is it? The horns, I'm forgetting the proper name for it right now, but people throw horns on so that they could digitally like tell the distance between something, and it's automatically focusing for them. And I don't like any of that. I don't like adding that weight to my camera. Sometimes it's not accurate, and I don't want to rely on it too much. So, I watch Terminator. I'm not trying to rely on the robots too much to do my job and replace me. So yeah,
true.
What is a Light Ranger?
The Light Ranger is this new piece of equipment that Preston came out with. And it's basically kind of like a digital sort of like sonar or something, where it's a digital like tape measure, where it if you place it somewhere, it will tell anything in front of the camera. It will automatically put it in focus. You pick a section of the monitor, like this is what I want, this is what it's reading, and it will automatically put everything in focus in that thing. And that might work, but it's just like, what if you're in a situation where, you know, where the camera is on a dolly and there's something moving in front of it in the foreground, you know, and then it'll automatically focus to the foreground. And you could set it so that it doesn't do that. But for me, I just don't, I like being on my toes. I like being, you know, aware of everything. It's kind of what keeps me awake. Because sometimes you can be on set and it's like not a lot of action going on. It could be a lot of monologuing and all that stuff. And it could easily get, you know, kind of sleepy time at that point. But so it's just like, I like to do things that keep me on my toes and challenge me mentally, so that I can do my job and be aware of everything happening. I mean, that's what works for me. It's not to knock anybody who does use like these equipment for assistance, but you know, I don't, and I think that's okay. It's worked for me so far.
Right. Sometimes the old school approaches are fine, just fine, you know?
Yeah. I mean, even if you do use the new technology, I mean, just having that old school as a baseline, so that if anything goes out, you know, like for whatever reason, a cable gets busted, or the batteries are all dead, or something happened and it just got destroyed, I can still do my job, and I know that I'm performing at a top level. You know, and that's really what it is for me. So it's just like, if I'm already performing at that level, why do I need all these extra things? I'm good, you know?
You mentioned the union. I'd love to hear more about the difference the union has made, or like, you know, was your career different before you became union? Because I know that's like a big thing for actors.
I think that for me, as a Black woman, you know, a Black Latina, that I just needed anything that would validate me, you know? When I came into the industry, like, film was still the thing, for TV shows, for commercials, you know, people were still shooting in film, and that year was heavy. And so when I was a PA, and when I was trying to get on as a camera PA or working with the camera department, these guys were flat out telling me, no, get out of here. Go be a producer, go be a writer. Like, don't you want to do that? This is backbreaking work, you know? And it was backbreaking work, you know? Crazy. It wasn't anything easy, you know? Like, you have 1,000-foot film in a magazine on a camera that's already 30 pounds. You've got something that's built out fully loaded. It's 80 pounds. And these guys were throwing it on their shoulders and doing handheld stuff, you know? So it's just like, none of the parts were light. They were all heavy. So then all of those parts together made this huge monster of a thing that it was just massive. And so you had these big guys who were like 6'5", like average, like camera assistant, you know, like 250 muscle. Like, these guys were just big. And so here I am, you know, I'm 5 feet, you know, I'm 5 feet tall. So I'm just like, and I'm a woman of color. So it was just like all of these things that were just like, no one would take me seriously. And so for me, being part of the union would signal, not only am I good, but I know what I'm doing, and you can't tell me anything, you know, like you can't deny me. And so I knew that that's what I needed to be validated in the eyes of anybody who wanted to work with me, you know? And a lot of times, people of color are not in the union, you know, a lot of times by choice, you know, they don't want to pay into something that is racist. They don't want to pay into something that you got to deal with certain attitudes on set, you know? So it's like a lot of guys opt out of that and they stay in the non-union world because it still pays them well and they get the respect, at least in that world. And that's fine. You know, I totally understand that. And I knew I could get on like pretty well in the non-union world. For me and my aspirations, I knew that I needed the union to get to where I want to be and to be respected and to be validated in the eyes of many who would look at me at first instance and be like, no, she's not. She's not someone I need right now, you know?
Did you get better quality jobs once you joined the union?
I mean, it was really a lot of fun. I mean, I came from being a prep tech making like $9 or $10 an hour. And then my first job out of there, it was with Louis Rothenberg and Craig Presgrove for this, like, I think this tier 3 film that was set in New Orleans, you know? So we shot in New Orleans, but the first week was in Vegas. And so I quit my job on a Friday, flew down to New Orleans that Sunday, and on Monday they flew me to Vegas. I had my own suite. I had a car. You know, we were there for a week, and then we came back to New Orleans and we shot the movie there for like 6 weeks. And then we came back up to New York and shot for a week in New York. And that was my first like real union film job, you know, and that was like the best thing I could ever ask for. I had never been on an adventure like that. And that's what it felt like. You know, it felt like an adventure. And I'm still friends with a lot of people that I met at the very beginnings of my career, you know, even from film school, you know. And so it's been nice to see not just me, but everyone around me that I started with grow, you know, like Louis Rothenberg, who hired me on that first job. He's now the president of our union. It's a great relationship to have, and like just to know somebody like that who had an impact on my life and to see where they are in theirs, you know.
Do you work out so that you're able to carry the heavy equipment that people questioned, you know, your ability to carry?
I do. Yeah, I do. And it's funny because just in this last year, I feel like I've gained some weight. So I've been like, okay, I got to hit the gym harder. But yeah, like working out has definitely helped keep my shoulders and my back and my core, like being able to, I feel like heal better, because otherwise you start getting these aches and pains when you fall out of shape. But yeah, working out, I kind of work out on set, you know, like you're carrying this camera all the time. You're carrying the batteries, you're carrying everything. And so you're pushing carts, and it does become like a test of strength and endurance. You know, so those are the things I try to focus on. I try to focus on like my arm strength, my core strength, and my back strength when I am in the gym. A lot of squatting and making sure that, you know, I'm pushing from my legs. So it's just like having that overall body workout is always going to be beneficial to, you know, staying healthy and being able to hit. It's like a marathon, you know, so being able to, you know, have a long career, I think it's always going to help.
What is your workflow process like with cinematographers in prep and then during production?
Well, during prep, I will be asked by a DP or, you know, a UPM or somebody who will call me and say, hey, I have this project coming up. Are you available? You know, and so that's where the whole it's all about who you know comes into play, because, you know, my network of people, you know, I might get referred to a job by someone, you know, so I'll have somebody call me up, ask me for my availability. And if I am available, I'll take the job and immediately get into, okay, what's our camera package? And sometimes, you know, you have some people who they don't know exactly what they want, you know, or they're like, oh, we did something similar before, so we just ordered the exact same package. And then I'll see, so they'll have like the basic stuff like camera, media, batteries. I personally like to have at minimum 8 batteries, onboard batteries per camera, and like 2 block batteries. If we have the budget for it, 12 onboards and maybe 3 blocks, you know, making sure we have all the handheld stuff. I've had situations where they'll say, oh, we don't have it in the budget to get a digital follow focus, so we'll just get the manual one. And I'm like, well, what are our shots? You know, so I have to ask them, what are our shots? What's the plan for the day? And if they'll tell me, oh yeah, we're going to be on dolly. Like, okay, so no, I need my digital follow focus, because if you're going to be on dolly doing these crazy moves, I can't sit on the dolly with you. A lot of times it's just, you know, I think in the old days they used to have the AC on the dolly with the camera op. But nowadays, it's not really as necessary, especially with these, like, you know, digital transmitted images on the monitors and stuff. So you don't need to be on the dolly. I like to be close to my operator. Just with those types of things, I try to fill in the gaps, basically. I'll get things just in case, Sometimes I go onto a prep and there's no filters. I'm like, hey, we're going to be outdoors. We're going to need a rotopola. We're going to need some NDs. And those are the things that I know to just, kind of put in some thought into it and be able to foresee based on my experience. Like, okay, I did this before and they told me we didn't need it. And then I've been on set where they've been like, hey, did you get that thing I told you we didn't need? We actually do need it, And I'm just like, well, I'm glad I didn't listen to you, So those are the types of things that go into prep, just trying to get as much information as possible about what the shoot will entail. And then trying to fill in the holes of like where I see the package. And okay, we don't have enough batteries. We only have one set of sticks. We're going to need two. Making sure that all my support, and basically making sure that my job is easier, making sure that I'm able to see things that people on the production prep like don't see, and then making sure that, okay, even if they're saying we don't need this, I think that we might, and trusting my gut in that instance,
Okay. And what about when you're on set?
So when I'm on set, so the prep, I kind of build the camera out to be as close to studio mode as possible. I put it in the coffin case, and then by the time we get to set, I want my camera to be ready to go. That all I got to do is put a battery on it and it's good to go. So trying to move as quickly and efficiently as possible is always the goal, with safety in mind, So I kind of want to get my camera up and running within 20 minutes, and not needing more time than that, so that no one can ever say that they're waiting on camera. And then at that point, communicating with my operator, communicating with the DP, and sometimes even the director. There's things that there's some special moments that the DP or director sees that they're just like, hey, they'll sneak over and be like, hey, we see our actors kind of smiling or doing something off the cuff that I like, start recording, So it'll be stuff like that. So just always being ready, like for anything to change, always being ready, like to go. Like, so I'm always by my camera. I don't drink as much water when I'm on set because I don't want I don't want the bathroom breaks to intrude on the timing on set. Yeah, I think that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, it's just trying to move as quickly and efficiently as possible. And of course, being able to hit my marks on the focal end of things.
Are there any tips you can offer us in regards to pull focusing?
What I have done is to always make sure I ask the DP or the operator if it's not already clear. A lot of times it kind of speaks for itself of what you're going to be focusing on and to, just based on where the positioning of the camera is. But if there's multiple characters moving around and we're just kind of swinging our head and, going back and forth between people, or there's a lot of people crossing the frame, I just try to have the clarity and I ask the DP, like, okay, is this who I'm focusing on? Am I keeping it on them the whole time? Or when this person crossed, do I go to the person who's crossing? Like, what do you want from me? The DP will let me know what they expect, what they want. If we get it on like the first 2 takes, great. And if there's more takes after that, then I try to switch it up. I probably try to come in from out of focus, depending on what the shot is. So I will ask the ADs for some sides so that I know what we're shooting, who's talking, what's the context of the scene, what's happening here. Is it an emotional scene? Is it, funny? Is there a gag? Is there, just what are the elements of the scene going on? And I try to be as informed as possible. And then from there, get that clarity and get that understanding from the DP. And then usually after we get the first few takes, and, sometimes you have directors who they're happy with that and they move on really quickly. And you have some directors who they're looking for something, and they do take after take after take. So it's just like, I want to give them options, so maybe I'll focus on if they're picking up, an item on the floor, and then, the scene starts with them, oh, let me pick up this piece of this prop or whatever, and then say my line. Like, maybe I'm going to focus on the thing that they're picking up and then go to their face when they start speaking. Or if they're talking about someone that's behind them, like, instead of keeping it on the person talking, getting the reaction of the person behind them, like, oh, they're talking about me, and like all that type of stuff. So I try to see where my operator is moving, kind of, and what does my eye naturally go to, and go to that. Mm-hmm. So there was a time, there was one day on Beale Street, we were in the apartment, and I think it was when she was telling them that she was pregnant, and the reaction of, so basically it was about Kiki Lane who was doing her lines, and this is about her and her news, but right behind her, Regina King is playing her mother, and she's reacting non-verbally, her body language and her face and her hands and all that stuff. They're moving in a way like, she's just a brilliant actress. And so there were things that she was doing that I was like, what is she doing? And so I would just focus to her, and then you would see like her pain or her love as a mother. And so, it was really cool because the DP would let us do the shot. He would tell us what he wanted us to do. We would do it the way he wanted, and we would get it really quickly. But Barry would want to keep doing more takes. And so after getting it the way that he wanted, he would come back to us and say, okay, now do whatever you want to do, mm-hmm. And so that was fun because it kind of gave us, it allowed me and my operator, Malcolm, to be a little bit more creative. And so we were able to, he would tell me like, hey, I'm going to pan down and then like pull up and do this, or I'm going to tilt down and then tilt up and get that, or I'm going to pan over to them over here on the right and then push in on this, And we would just kind of do things a little bit differently whenever they gave us the license to. And there was one time for that scene with Regina where I got her expressions that Barry came up to me and he was just like, basically whispered in my ear, like, thank you for doing that. You really helped me feel differently about this scene. And I think it's because you helped me see it through the eyes of a woman.
Wow.
And so that was very encouraging. It was very, I was excited to hear that, he had just come off of his win for Moonlight. And so that was a great encouragement. And so it was just like, that was basically my green light to keep doing things like that, to keep searching out the frame and seeing who else in this frame is like expressing emotions that are nonverbal, and helping the actors kind of express themselves in a way that, I'm supporting them and they don't even know it,
That's dope.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's very dope. Can you talk about the differences between working on larger Hollywood projects such as Beale Street Could Talk versus like a more indie guerrilla style film, and what kind of gears you have to use for both?
Honestly, they both have their pros and cons. Like Beale Street could have actually been this big studio funded film, but because the studios were kind of telling them what to do, it actually became more of an indie kind of film in that way, because then they went with their own private backers and they didn't take the studio funding or the studio backing for them, because they didn't want too many heads in the pot, like it was just too much going on, I guess, on that end of things. But I've been on some big blockbuster films and they've run a tight ship on the bigger budgets. Everything is very meticulously controlled. Like as a loader, you're told by the studio how to file the downloads. And so everything is meticulously like controlled and mediated. Everyone's job is very clearly like understood and known. And like a lot of times the departments kind of stick to themselves, like kind of like cliques in that sense. You have hundreds of people, you know, like you could easily be on a big $100 million picture and there's like 200 people on set, you know, sometimes more if you got like this huge scene with a lot of background. And
that's
so
unfathomable to me. Like I've never, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane,
yeah.
But it's a lot of fun, you know, because it's just like you're seeing like how this big machine is being run, you know, and you feel like you're one part of this huge machine being run, you know, whereas like on a smaller film set, like I think it's great for people who are starting out because there's more cross-pollination between the departments, you know, like they might not have enough grip. I might help them like, oh, let me help you get this sandbag because you don't have a guy to do this and you're holding a light so it doesn't fall on anybody's head, you know, like there's just, so you're able to learn the responsibilities and the tasks of the different jobs on set and the different departments on set. And so I think that like, so they're all beneficial in different ways. So if you want to learn, if you're a PA and you want to learn, like a lot of times PAs think that they want to be directors, but then you get onto a set and you're realizing how big of a job that is. And you're like, wait, I don't want that job. And what are other things I could do? And you can help other departments do their job. And you end up making those relationships. And you're like, oh, I actually like working in props, or I like working in set design, or I like, you know, there's so many different things. So I think that's what the smaller productions are good for. And so, and then sometimes you meet people who are more innovative, more creative on the smaller jobs. So there's tricks that you might learn that you might not learn on the bigger jobs because everything is so controlled and like they've had their shot list already planned out like 3 months before. Everything is very clearly stated. Whereas like on a smaller production, you're able to be a little bit more, you can have more input on the creativity. So it's all about what you want to get out of your experience, you know, and for some people, it's just a check. And for some people, it's to express themselves creatively. You know, you can do that in different ways in each situation.
Yeah.
What is your favorite camera?
I'm biased. I really am biased. I really do love the Alexa. I was working at CSC when they debuted the Alexa. It was like night and day. It really was because, you know, there was the red camera before that, but the red, there's a lot, you know, there's a lot that's just not there with it, but that the Alexa just looks so good for a digital camera, you know, especially with the mini where it's lightweight and it's very, what I love about the Alexa is that it really, I feel like democratized the industry. Like it changed the industry for the better, you know. That's when I feel like more women, more, I feel like there's more diversity on set. Like I've seen more Asians and Black people on set now than before. It really changed the game. Like I just love that camera. I love how things look on it, you know, and some people, you know, they like other cameras, you know. I think the Venice is also another really good camera. It has a dual ISO base. So it's just like you can really get some like some really great pictures off of like really low light situations where it's really dark, but you can still see the detailing on someone's face. So Sony definitely upped the ante with this new camera of theirs. I think it came out about a year and a half ago. And it's a great camera, but I just feel like I just love the Alexa. I'm just partial to it. And I think it's because I started with that company.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that camera also. So I get it.
It's beautiful. It looks
Yes,
like
it
looks like film. It's the closest thing to film.
Really good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was the first digital camera that I feel like that really made it didn't have a digital look. you know? And so it's just like, yeah, you have other companies who are chasing that and who've helped improve it too. But I always like going with the originator and the innovator, you know, and Ari is always a really good workhorse.
Can you talk about how you learned how to use these? I mean, obviously, I know you learned how to use these cameras on set, on the job. But did you find any resources to kind of test and play with these cameras before getting on set, you know, to maybe prep or just to get more information and knowledge?
I mean, there's always reading material that you can take into consideration. Me, I'm more of a hands-on kind of person. I like to learn by pressing the buttons, you know? So for me, the prep is where I can learn all of these things. If there's any new firmware or software or whatever that they've installed, like, hey, what have you guys done to improve this camera? Like, what do I need to know? What is this? Like, if I'm in this situation where we got to go slow-mo, it's all pretty straightforward with the Alexa. So I know that because I know that camera really well. But if I'm working with a camera that I don't know well, I use my time at the prep to figure out, hey, how do I change the frame rate? How do I change the shutter angle, the this, the that, you know, because there's different cameras have different menu systems that you have to go through to sort of figure out how to change certain settings. So I try to know a lot of like the quick keys or the basic stuff that we usually change on set. Like, how do I do that here? And yeah, the prep is really good for that. And the prep techs or the engineers and technicians at the rental houses are really informative. And I don't care how silly I sound asking any question. I just ask it and don't get embarrassed about it. Mm-hmm. And they're really good and really understanding with like, oh, and let me show you this other neat trick that we did with this, like this improvement, you know. And that was another thing I actually learned this weekend on the camera test yesterday, that Ari has this firmware where the Mini can shoot and look like a Super 16 camera. So we were shooting it in this setting. We changed it to Super 16. And I was just like, wait, how did I never knew about this? And they were like, yeah, this is one of the newest additions to the firmware that they've added. And so it applies a graininess to the image without having to pass it in a post. Wow. Like, you know, it looked beautiful. It looked really, really good. And even the DIT, or the DP, she was just like, she was like, damn it, like, this looks amazing. And I can't fight this, because it was basically a camera test between, are we going to shoot on the Mini or are we going to shoot on the Venice? You know, and she loves the Venice, but her director loves the Mini, and he was sold on the Mini because of the Super 16 feature. And so what they ended up deciding was that for the special shots where that Super 16 feature is necessary, they're probably going to shoot it on the Mini. But for everything else, they're going to shoot it on the Venice. And so that was the result of that test yesterday. And it was like, I was like, wow, okay, this is awesome.
What do you think about the Black Magics?
The Black Magics, I haven't had their new ones. I've heard a lot of great things about the newer models that they have. For me, I've kind of stayed away from it because at least in the beginning with previous models that they had, they just didn't perform well on the battery side of things. The batteries would always it would just die really quickly, you know, so it was always replacing the battery constantly. And because it was a small body, you know, it was just not reliable for the kinds of shoots that I was on, you know. So I think it's a good camera or it has been a good camera, like more for student films that can look really good on a cheaper budget, you know. It's not ideal for the studio projects that I'm on because it's just a smaller body and there's so many different attachments that you need. That it's just not ideal, at least not for the projects that I'm on, you know. But I think that if you're doing a music video, if you're doing a documentary, or if you have a really, really tight budget, it's a great option to have, you know. And I think it's great that anybody who wants to tell the story can be able to purchase a camera like that gives them a high quality image. You know, so I just root for anybody who wants to tell a story. It doesn't matter what you use. I mean, I worked with the DP who shot Tangerine, and that was on an iPhone, you know? So I'm not against any kind of equipment being used, but it's just like what makes my job easier on a big shoot. And an iPhone probably isn't what I want to use if I want to do my job efficiently, you know?
Do you have difficulty working with directors that focus solely on the actor's performance and may not have as much technical knowledge? Do you feel like it compromises the quality of like the shots?
No, because you hope that the DP can filter that language into something that is something we can work with, you know. But you have directors like David Fincher who can do everybody's job better than them, you know. He goes in and he knows everything about the camera, has not just exact measurements, but like down to the angle of degree that the camera should be in to get a plate shot, to what lens you should be on and where the iris should be set. Like he knows that sometimes even more than the DP, you know, because he's such a technical guy. But he's been making films since he was a kid, you know, like literally, like since he was a child. Like I actually worked with his childhood best friend, and they grew up like making horror movies like in their backyard. So this is a guy like, and the same thing with Tarantino and the same thing with Spike, that is just like they know every single person's job on set. Wow. So if the sound person is like, if we find ourselves like, what are we waiting for? Why aren't we doing the take? You know, you have Spike saying, what are we waiting on? And it's like, oh, sound, they need to change their batteries. And it's just like, well, that takes 2 minutes and we've been waiting for 10 minutes. What's going on? Oh, it turns out that they weren't prepared for their batteries to be dead. So they had to run to the camera truck where the sound equipment is, like 8 blocks away.
Wow.
And then run back, you know, and then, you know, they get kind of ripped on set. It's just like, you were not prepared. You know, you need to be prepared. If you need to be able to see that if your batteries die, do I have some close by me, you know, and they'll be told about themselves on set, you know. So that's what a technical director does. They know everybody's job and they will check people for wasting their time. So you've got to be on your toes. You've got to have like all your T's crossed and your I's dotted with those guys. Whereas like with an actor's director, they're more creative. They're more kind of like flighty and kind of like the experience of filmmaking, you know. So they kind of don't get involved in the technical things, and you just have people who can say, oh yes, it's just taking me 10 minutes to switch out this battery on this boom mic, when no, they don't know that it takes 2 minutes to do something like that, you know. So it's just like they kind of won't know certain things like that. I mean, there's benefits to both, you know. I've learned a lot with the technical directors and I've learned a lot with the creative directors. So it's just making sure everything runs smoothly regardless of who's at the helm.
All right. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us on the Black Film Space podcast. This was an amazing interview. Love your passion and enthusiasm, and I learned a lot. So where can people find you on the internet or social media?
I have my website, michellclementine.com. I've been moving more into shooting and camera operating. So I've, you know, right now I'm bi-coastal and I've been DPing more projects. So you can find some of my work there. And on my Instagram, Cinematine Cinematine@gmail is my email. But Clementine on Instagram is my social media. If people want to find me there.
All right. How do you spell that?
CineMentine. It's a cross between, you know, cinema and Clementine.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for listening to the Black Film Space podcast. If you're interested in being part of our community and attending events, please visit us at blackfilmspace.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Black Film Space. Subscribe to our email list and podcast. All right, see you soon.